Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're tackling taboo beliefs and controversies. Specifically, we're going to be looking at psychology professors in the U.S.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we found a really interesting study about this in Perspectives on Psychological Science. They actually interviewed and surveyed a bunch of psychology professors.
Okay.
And what's wild is that for every controversial research conclusion, there was this huge divide. Some professors were like 100% certain it was true, while others were 100% certain it was false.
Yeah, that is fascinating how polarized those beliefs can be, especially in academia. You'd think there'd be at least some agreement, right?
Right. Like if the experts can't even agree, what does that mean for the rest of us?
Exactly.
So how did they even design this study? It wasn't just some random online poll, was it?
No, not at all. It was a two-phase study, actually. First, they did these really in-depth interviews.
Okay.
Talking to 41 psychology professors from some of the top universities and grad programs across the country.
Like the best of the best.
Exactly. And the goal was to really pinpoint those research conclusions that were considered the most controversial, like almost taboo to talk about openly.
So they were basically figuring out what topics were off limits, like what people were afraid to even discuss.
Yeah, exactly. It was a smart way to make sure they were hitting those real pressure points within the field.
I see. So through these interviews, they came up with a list.
Exactly. A list of 10 controversial conclusions. And that became the foundation for their big survey. Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Watch them all drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
We've got this 2023 study where almost 500 psychology professors
Wow.
from top U.S. universities basically revealed their honest opinions on some really controversial topics.
Yeah, these are like the unspoken things, you know?
Yeah. Imagine a world where even professors are hesitant to discuss certain research findings openly.
It happens more than you'd think.
Seriously. That's kind of wild, right?
It is. The study authors call these taboo conclusions, things that scientifically might have some support.
Okay.
But if you're too vocal about them, you risk some serious social and professional backlash.
So it's like this weird tightrope walk.
Exactly.
Like everyone's trying to be careful not to step on any toes.
Especially in a field that's like dedicated to understanding the human mind, you know?
You'd think there'd be more open discussion.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
That's what makes this so interesting.
Definitely. But before we even get into these like taboo conclusions,
Yeah.
we got to acknowledge that disagreements, they're normal in science, right?
Absolutely. It's actually how we move forward, how we learn.
Right. But what this study shows is how these disagreements get really heated
Yes.
when you bring in things like morality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like societal values.
It becomes less about the data and more about the potential fallout.
It's like, how will this data impact the world? What could happen if people misinterpret it?
So there are real stakes involved.
Huge stakes.
The study even mentioned how some journals are now thinking about rejecting papers, not because the methodology is bad, but because of the potential harm to society.
Isn't that interesting?
It's a whole other layer to consider.
Definitely. So, like, imagine a study finds a real difference between groups on a sensitive topic.
Okay.
The methodology is perfect, but the findings could be, misused or twisted.
Oh, so the journal's worried about the potential backlash.
Exactly. It's not just the science anymore. It's how that science gets perceived and used.
Navigating a minefield.
It really is. And that brings us to the 10 taboo conclusions this study actually dove into.
Okay, lay it on me.
So we're talking about stuff that can lead to some intense debate, even personal attacks. We're talking about the evolutionary basis of like sexually coercive behavior, gender differences that stem from evolution,
Okay.
the underrepresentation of women in STEM, racial disparities in intelligence, and whether genetics play a role.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of,
Yeah, like I said, minefield.
definitely. I'm curious, though, what did the professors actually think about this stuff?
Well, their beliefs on these conclusions were all over the place.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like for each statement, you had some professors who were 100% convinced it was true,
Okay.
and others who were just as sure it was false.
Wow, so it wasn't just like a slight difference of opinion.
Nope, not at all. And this variation, it wasn't random.
What do you mean?
Well, the study found that certain factors really predicted what a professor believed.
Like what?
Well, gender, for one.
Oh, interesting. So men and women professors saw things differently.
Often, yeah. One example that stood out was this idea that men and women evolved, like different psychological traits, because of different evolutionary pressures.
Okay, I can see where that might get controversial.
Totally. Male professors, they were more likely to agree with that statement.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they might point to research that suggests historically men had to compete more for mates,
Okay.
so they evolved to be more risk-taking, whereas women who were more responsible for, nurturing kids,
Right.
they might have developed stronger empathy and social skills.
It's like those roles shaped how our brains work.
That's the idea, yeah. But female professors, they were more divided on this whole thing.
Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
They might question whether these differences are really innate or more shaped by, society.
Right, like what we're expected to be like as men and women.
So it's like our own experiences influence how we interpret the science, even when we're trying to be objective.
It's hard to escape,
Definitely.
Oh,
And then you add in political ideology.
oh, yeah, that was a big one.
I bet. So liberal versus conservative.
It was a factor, but it wasn't that simple.
Really?
Yeah, there were some surprising nuances. Take the statement about academia discriminating against Black people.
Okay. Sensitive topic for sure.
For sure. Liberal professors, maybe because they're more attuned to systemic inequalities,
Yeah.
they were more likely to agree with that statement.
While conservatives might see things differently.
Yeah, they might emphasize individual merit more.
So they might be less likely to see discrimination as the main factor.
Right, exactly. It really highlights how it's not just about facts.
I see what you mean.
It's about how those facts are filtered through our own values and experiences.
Okay, that makes sense. But you know what we haven't talked about yet?
What's that?
This whole thing about self-censorship.
Oh,
The study found that a lot of professors were, hesitant to share their real views on these topics.
yeah, it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it?
It is. But why were they so worried?
Well, they were afraid of backlash from their colleagues,
Mm.
damaged their reputation, maybe even trouble getting published.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is. And it's a reminder that even in academia, where open inquiry is supposed to be valued,
Right.
there are all these unspoken rules and pressures.
So it's not as free as we might think.
Not always, no. And honestly, this isn't just an academia thing.
You're right. Everyone self-censors sometimes.
Yeah, in different parts of our lives.
But when that fear starts to affect the pursuit of knowledge itself.
That's where it gets dangerous.
Exactly. Like, if researchers avoid certain topics,
Mm-hmm.
our understanding of the world becomes incomplete.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
And we could miss out on major insights just because they're deemed too risky to explore.
It's a loss for everyone, honestly.
This is giving us a lot to think about.
It really is. And we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah. There's more.
Oh, there's definitely more to uncover. We'll be right back after this.
All right, so we've seen how personal beliefs and backgrounds, really shape people's views on these taboo topics.
Yeah,
But what about actions? What do these beliefs actually lead to?
that's where this study gets even juicier.
Oh.
It also looked at what professors thought should happen when research gets into these, sensitive areas.
Okay, like what?
We're talking about things like suppressing research, retracting published papers,
Wow.
even potentially punishing colleagues who, present controversial findings.
So basically trying to silence those dissenting voices.
Right. Given the potential for controversy, you might think they'd be all for it, right?
Yeah, I guess I would assume that.
But the results were kind of surprising, actually.
Really? How so?
Despite all that self-censorship we talked about, most professors were strongly against those kinds of actions.
Interesting.
They generally supported academic freedom and open exchange.
Even for ideas that are, like, offensive or controversial.
Yeah, even then, it seems like they understood that, trying to shut down research because of moral concerns,
Yeah.
it could actually do more harm than good.
That makes sense, I guess. Like, trying to suppress something might just make it blow up even more.
Exactly. It's like that saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Oh, right.
Open debate and scrutiny, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Those are the best ways to, expose bad arguments, refine our understanding, and get closer to the truth.
So it's better to have it all out in the open.
Right. And the study specifically asked about retracting articles or even, dismissing scholars.
For what reasons?
For things like promoting stereotypes, offending certain groups, or, undermining social justice.
What do they say?
Again, most professors felt that those were very rarely valid reasons for taking such drastic measures.
So it's not about silencing research just because it makes people uncomfortable.
Right. They seem to get the difference between, say, a study that actually advocates for discrimination versus one that simply reports statistical differences between groups, even if those differences are sensitive.
So context matters.
Context and intent, for sure.
It's like even findings that make us squirm, they could still lead to breakthroughs.
Totally. Those are the ones that force us to really question our assumptions and see things in new ways.
Like a necessary shakeup.
Exactly. This reminds me of that John Stuart Mill argument.
Oh, yeah.
That even if only one person dissents, silencing them harms everyone.
Because we lose out on their perspective.
Right. We lose the chance to learn from them, to test our own beliefs, and maybe even expand our understanding.
Who knows, that one dissenting voice might be onto something huge.
Or at least spark a new line of inquiry that leads to, an even greater truth.
It's like we need that friction to make progress.
Exactly. Of course, we got to remember this study was just a snapshot.
What?
U.S. psychology professors back in 2023. It'd be fascinating to see how those perspectives have changed.
Especially now, right?
Yeah, with everything that's happened, the world feels even more polarized.
Has the pressure to conform gotten worse? Or have people pushed back for more intellectual freedom?
And what about other fields? Do they have their own taboo topics?
Good question.
They're crucial questions, actually, because the stakes are high.
What do you mean?
Well, if we limit the free exchange of ideas, it doesn't just hold back scientific progress. It actually undermines, the foundation of a democratic and intellectually vibrant society.
Wow, I hadn't thought of it that way.
It's bigger than just, a few controversial studies.
This has definitely given us a lot to unpack.
It really has.
But before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
let's bring this home for our listeners.
Okay.
What can you actually take away from all of this? We'll explore that right after the break. So we've gotten pretty deep here. From these taboo topics to all the pressures around self-censorship.
Yeah.
It is. But what does it all actually mean for, the people listening?
I think this study, it kind of shows this tension we all face,
Oh.
not just in academia, but in life in general.
Oh. Like what?
It's that pull between wanting to protect people from being hurt and also wanting to have real honest conversations.
Even when it gets uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's not easy.
No, it's definitely a tough balance.
Yes.
We obviously don't want to give a platform to, hate speech or anything dangerous.
Right.
But we also don't want to create this culture where people are afraid to speak up or ask tough questions.
Or challenge the way things are,
Yeah, exactly. Because if we shut down that kind of intellectual exploration, we basically end up with these echo chambers.
Oh, for sure.
Where everyone's just reinforcing what they already believe.
And new ideas, they just get shut out.
And that can affect not just intellectual progress, but social progress too.
It really can.
So this study really shows how important it is to navigate this tension well.
Yeah.
To create spaces where people feel safe to share.
Right.
But also where they're open to, being challenged and listening to other perspectives.
And having respectful debates, even when you disagree.
It's not easy, though.
No, it definitely takes work.
What do you think is most important?
I think it takes empathy, for sure.
Yeah.
Being open-minded and willing to get a little uncomfortable.
Step outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. But the rewards are, Huge EE.
How so?
When we have these tough conversations the right way, we
Yeah.
open ourselves up to new possibilities, new understanding.
Even new solutions,
Exactly. We become more informed, more nuanced, more adaptable.
which is crucial in a world that's always changing.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about.
Okay.
What are the taboo topics in your world? Like in your field, your community, even your family?
Are you having honest conversations about those things?
Yes.
Or are you tiptoeing around them because you're afraid of, upsetting someone or making waves?
This is a good question.
It is. What's the cost of that silence? And what could you gain by breaking it?
Because a lot of times, progress starts with being willing to ask those uncomfortable questions.
To challenge the status quo, even if it's messy.
Exactly. Keep those questions in mind as you go about your day.
And never stop seeking out new perspectives.
That's what's so great about these deep dives.
I think so too.
They're not about giving you all the answers.
Right.
It's about sparking new questions and encouraging you to keep exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
And we'll see you on the next deep dive.